Hello and welcome to Floorplanner. My name is Bob. I'm here with customer success to go ahead and bring on some tips and tricks, starting a mini series. So this will be mini series 1, and we're going to go ahead and talk about building walls and how to actually trace a background. So let's get started and put together a quick little snippet video for you. So you're looking at, of course, your home page, and we've gone ahead and logged in and started up a project. So for this example, I've named it Tips and Tricks Mini Series 1. There's my name at the top. And we're going to go ahead and start with the hammer over here on the left-hand side, which will open up your draw room, draw wall, draw surface commands, which is how we're going to draft our room. So let's get started. So we can start with the draw room, which will actually draw all 4 walls, ceiling and floor all at the same time. Or we can draw a room wall by wall by wall. The most important goal is you want to make sure that you complete your entire perimeter of your home or your room. Don't try to compensate for doors, windows, or openings in advance. You can always add those later. You want to complete the entire circuit of your walls. So let's start with the draw a room feature. You want to go ahead and identify the thickness of your walls. Here in the US, interior partitions are typically 5 inches thick. And you also want to know how high your ceiling is, so your wall height and or your ceiling height. So we're going to go ahead and make an assumption that maybe this example is 10 feet high. And raised from floor, all walls start on the ground, for the most part. And you're talking about being at elevation 0. So we're all set and ready to go. You have all your information in place. When you drag your mouse over top of your grid over here, you'll notice that you have a crosshair. And inside that crosshair is a little blue circle. The blue circle actually has a diameter to it, which represents the thickness that you gave to your walls. So our diameter of our blue circle right now is 5 inches, as we made our walls 5 inches thick. The crosshair, that intersection point, is actually where we're going to be drafting from. And when you're drafting in Floorplanner, you're literally drafting from the middle of the wall, not the edge of the wall. So always take that into consideration. So you can see in the lower left-hand corner, you can see that the specifications are already shown. There's a 5-inch thick wall and 10-foot high ceilings, which of course you can see on your editor window on the left-hand side also. So with everything being set, I can go ahead and left-click my mouse and just start dragging. I have my mouse still depressed, my little left click still depressed, and I can drag in any direction from this point to drag out a box of any size. If you see in your lower left-hand corner, you can see the dimensions keep changing as I'm pulling out my mouse. I'm not letting go. I'm holding onto my mouse, holding down my left mouse click. I could actually use my left hand, though, to actually type in some dimensions. If I wanted this room to be 20 feet by 20 feet, I could actually type with my left hand 20 feet, comma, space, 20 feet, and hit the Enter key. And we've gone ahead and created our room. The fact that it's beige on the inside identifies the fact, this is good, identifies the fact that you have a floor and you have a ceiling already created. All 4 walls are created, 10 feet high, floor, ceiling generated, and you've completed that task. If you want to try this maybe a little different way to have some more control on it, I'm going to go ahead and do my undo button to take us back to ground zero again. And let's do this a little bit differently. We say, let's draw a room. We've already set our thickness of our walls and it's retained that information. So if I left click a point and just start dragging out a box, and of course we have those dimensions showing in the lower left-hand corner, I can just draw out a box of any size or any shape to represent my room, because I can always change the dimensions later. So any size, and just let go. Now, this is not a 20 by 20 room. So we want to go ahead and make some modifications. These dimensions actually have intelligence to them. You can see that your interior dimensions from corner to corner are here. Your exterior dimensions from the outside corner of the product, left and right, as your dimensions here. If you select, let's go for the inner dimensions, because we want to make the inside drywall to drywall surface 20 feet by 20 feet. If you select the dimension itself, you realize that you can actually highlight it. I'm just left clicking and sweeping over top, and we can go ahead and type in 20 feet. Now you don't hit enter at this point. You have 3 tabs to select from up above, because how do you want to modify this space? You want it to be 20 feet from wall to wall, but are you editing it based on the wall below and pushing it up? Or are you taking the wall above and editing it from the wall above? Or are you doing it from the center? Pick one of these three options. Again, don't hit enter, just select your option. I'm going to go from the center and select that tab. And you'll see that we've modified the distance from drywall to drywall as the interior dimension is 20 feet. We'll do that same task down here on the bottom and go ahead and sweep over top of these dimensions and type in 20 feet. And again, select one of the three tabs to make that modification. And I'll have to go from the center for this point. And you can use this anytime when you're working in Floorplanner. You'll have all your dimensions showing. Your automated dimensions will show around your perimeter. So you can select a dimension line and overwrite them at any point, but always be conscious as to which wall and which direction you're making your modification. Think about it, hit the right tab, you're good. If you hit the wrong tab, just undo it and try that task again until you get it the way you want it to be. Always hit your save button, of course, to keep this saved out in the cloud. I want to show you something else, that sometimes you may have an interior room that you don't have the dimensions showcased around. It could be an interior closet, and you need to make some sort of change in the size. So let me show you how you can actually, because you always want those exact dimensions. Like, how can I move that exactly the right dimension? You can drag any of your walls out also. So if I select a wall and I left click on that wall when it's identified, I can start pushing in any direction. Now you can see the blue line appearing in the very center for the dimension line. You can see that its dimension keeps changing for the interior dimension. I can, much like we did at the early start, I can use my left mouse click as I'm still holding my left mouse click down and I'm just pressing the wall in the direction that I want it to go. And I could use my left hand again, because you can see the dimensions in the lower left-hand corner. Leave my right hand with my mouse, left mouse click is still depressed. Use my left hand and say, I want that distance to be exactly 15 feet and hit enter. And you can see from the dimensions actually in here that it actually is exactly 15 feet. So again, sometimes you may have a room or a wall somewhere more interior within your whole floor plan that you need to make an exact modification to that distance. So grab the wall you want to make the change on, start moving it in either direction, and go ahead and use your left hand to go ahead and enter the exact dimension and hit enter, and it'll modify that distance correctly. So those are some really valuable tools on spacing and how to actually lay out your wall distances exactly. I'm going to go ahead and go backwards for a second, place that back the way it was, and show you now also you can do that same exercise drawing a room wall by wall by wall. So instead of drawing the room with all four walls, floor and ceiling together, we're going to go ahead and just draw it wall by wall. Gives you a little bit more control, but you have to be a little bit more conscious of what you're working on. Again, your thickness of your wall needs to be identified, how high the wall is, and of course, sitting on the ground level at elevation 0. So to trace this one wall at a time, I can just go ahead and left click a point and go ahead and start pointing in the direction that I want to start placing my first wall. Notice that there is a line that appears. It's a very soft snap within Floorplanner. Don't look for something very severe. You have to be conscious of the fact that it's there, but that's a nice orthogonal. It keeps it nice and level. You always want to keep your lines as straight as possible. Don't try to go off into any sort of strange angles. And you always want to make your walls very clean. One point to one point end. Start one point to one point end. Again, try not to fill in a lot of little pieces to try to fill in your wall. That'll add a lot of confusion when the automated floors and ceilings are being created, trying to match up. So try to keep it as clean as possible. So again, watch for that orthogonal snap. So I'm going in this direction. I could conceivably actually, I let go of everything, by the way, just push the mouse in that direction. It's all orthogonal, ready to go. I could just go ahead and type in 20 feet and hit enter, and it gives me a 20-foot long wall. I can continue building from there if I care to. Now, just be cautious of the fact that as you continue, you're drafting from the midpoint of your wall. we have a 5-inch thick wall, so you're going to have some variations between 2.5 inches and doubling that to be 5 inches because you're actually tracing from the middle for right now. You can always modify those dimensions later, but you'll see what happens to that 20-foot long wall that was so perfect. We're going to go ahead and continue drawing wall by wall and just go ahead and bring my mouse down. I'm just going to select any point at this right now, just following that nice orthogonal line. And go ahead and move out a little bit in this direction and go down again. And maybe you're just outlining what you know is the shape of your room. What's really cool as you get toward the end over here on the left-hand side, we're still following that nice orthogonal line going out. Notice that the blue line came down from the top, so it tells you where to stop because it knows that you're going to try to rejoin that wall at the top. And I can left click at this point. Now, if I hit escape, it'll stop the multi-wall function, which I'm in the middle of. So if you ever need to stop, hit escape and you've stopped the command that you're working on. But of course, notice it's not beige inside at this point, which is what you're trying to achieve, even if it's an open floor plan, because you can always add those openings later. So you really want to complete the circuit on this. So don't let that be just a white square in the background. Finish out your circuit, find your nice orthogonal, find the snap point, left click, completed the space, nice shape, turned beige, has a ceiling, has a floor. It's pretty well there. But notice with the nice 20-foot wall that we started with, since we did a continuation, always drafting from the center point, it made a variation based on the thickness of the wall. So let's go ahead and select that dimension like we talked about before, change this out to be 20 feet. And if we want to go ahead and modify this wall to now be 20 feet, am I moving the wall on the left? Am I moving the wall on the right? Or am I working from the center? So I'm going to take the wall on the right, so I'm going to push this wall out to the right. And here's that tab right there. And you made that modification. So you have the power to go ahead and make these dimensional changes. So again, draft out the general shape of your room. You can always take those dimensions from your as-built or any of the information you have on the actual layout and make those modifications later. So let me just show you that in 3D so you know that in fact we have built out our room. You're looking at this with your 3D orbit up here. You can select the zoom extents over here on the left-hand side that'll fill your space for you. And you can left mouse click and start twirling around your space a little bit. And right now the cutaway walls is on, so the walls that are right in front of your camera will disappear so you can view your space better. And if you ever need to turn those cutaway walls off in your 3D settings up here, 3D settings, cutaway walls, turn it off, and you're back into your box. So let's go back into 2D for a second. Let's save our file, of course. And I want to show you how to trace a project. So this was really good from scratch if you knew the dimensions of your property that you're working with, but maybe sometimes you can get a floor plan. Maybe you got it from your architect, you got it from your builder, your developer, from a real estate broker, online. You may be looking up a specific property and you see all these floor plans that are available to you. All you need to work towards is try to find a JPEG image or PNG image of your floor plan. So I'm going to go ahead and go backwards again and just go ahead and take the space out. Actually, yeah, let's go back. Okay, we undid everything, so we got to this nice empty space. Now, let's say you got that floor plan as a JPEG image. I happened to look at a real estate agent that was posting, and they had their little floor plan online. So I downloaded the JPEG image to my computer, and we're going to go ahead and put it actually inside this plan. So to trace the plan, we're going to go ahead and go to the hammer, like we said, for construction. And down here at the bottom, it's a setting called background settings. If you open up background settings and you say choose a file, that JPEG image or PNG, right now mine is JPEG and it's actually on my computer. So I downloaded it and I just need to find it. So I say choose the file. And we're going to go to my desktop. And inside there, I have a little subfolder right there. And there's a JPEG image I took offline. And just say open. And you can see the blue circle twirling around in the upper left-hand corner. And there it is. Now, always remember that your grid, I'm going to talk in imperial feet and inches for a moment. The grid in the background represents 1 foot squares. So if you start looking at this, you kind of assume that it didn't exactly come into scale. Now, what is the proper scale? You want your background image to be 1 foot equals 1 foot, or 1 to 1, because you want it to be real world scale. That's how we draft in Floorplanner. You want to make sure that it's always real world scale. So we need to do one function with this. We just need to edit this inserted JPEG so it truly is 1 to 1 real world scale. To do so, there's a little feature at the upper left-hand corner for your backdrop. It says draw a line next to something you know the real life size of. And here's the tab that you're going to go ahead and activate. You just need from one point to one point a dimension. And what should that dimension be? It could be a dimension line on your plan. It could be a scaling block that's actually on your plan. Right now, we don't have either of them with this particular plan, but we do have some dimensions already noted in here. And sure enough, there's a dimension there that says 11 feet. So from this drywall surface to this drywall surface, that should be 11 feet. So if I wanted to go ahead and scale this, I could go ahead and say, draw a line next to something I know the real life size of, activate that tab, and left click a point. So I have an intersection right here at the drywall surface, make it as accurate as you can. Go to the other side and select the other point, and then enter exactly what that dimension should be. 11 feet, hit enter, and you'll see that it's already made the image larger. And being larger, we can see that the blocks in the background, if you start counting them, probably very close to 11 feet. If you want to do that, you can do it multiple times if you want to make it a little bit more refined. As the image gets a little bit larger, you'll notice that your crosshairs, we'll do this again, get a little tighter, a little more accurate. So I can go from point to point. Again, make it as clean as you can because accuracy is a very important feature to get you started. And go ahead and say 11 feet, hit enter, tweaked it just a little bit. So let's say our background is good to go at that point. Hit save. Now what you can do at that point, we could just go ahead and close out of the backdrop. It's now real world scale. And you could actually go right into interior design at this point, start taking your furniture and dragging and dropping it right onto that plan. Although you have no walls, floors, or ceiling, you can start doing space planning exercises right up front and even export these as two-dimensional documents. But we're going to go ahead and use the background since we've got it in there and do that same exercise we did earlier, but this time we're going to trace a background. So if we go to the hammer, and we say draw a room, and of course we would still have had to enter how thick is the walls, the partitions that we're utilizing, how high is your ceiling, and of course, again, we're drafting from elevation 0. Now, with these settings here, like we did before, how we just drew out a box, well, there's the crosshair, and there's the circle inside of it, and I can go ahead and trace a room, but I'm going to trace a square room right now just to keep this simple. We can always modify it later and add walls, change walls. But when we're drafting, like I mentioned before, we're drafting from the midpoint of the wall. Very, very important that it's in the middle. And I would probably try to get this corner in the middle of both directions. So find that intersection as close as you can, left click, and start dragging out your box like we did before. Yet now I'm visually tracing the edge of the wall, although I'm drafting from the middle. So I'm pulling from the middle of the wall, but I can actually start tracing the background and see exactly, make it so it aligns with the inside, trace it nice and clean, and say, looks pretty darn close, so let go. And it turned beige, which means I have a floor and I have a ceiling and the room is created. Now we could always, like I said, go back and add those other walls that are in here, actually build the whole unit. But for sake of just building this one room right now, you can see we were really close. The actual dimensions of the drywall surface to drywall surface here, we traced it. The drawing may be truly to scale as we scaled it earlier, but you can see I missed it by 1/4 of an inch, which I'm an architect, so I've got to make this right. So let's go ahead and click that number and modify this like in the exercise we did before. I'm going to change this out to be 11 feet exactly. And go ahead, you can modify from the wall below, wall above, or from the center. I'm okay to do this from the center. And there it is. It's exactly 11 feet. Your room is created. And I'm going to go ahead and type our B key, B as in background on my keyboard, which will make the background go away. And realize that we have now created, based on the trace, the exact dimensions of that room. So I've given you a few different ways to go ahead and draft from scratch, building a room, building wall by wall by wall, and also to go ahead and insert a background that we can go ahead and trace. And if I type my B key again, it comes back. Type B again, goes away. Hope you've enjoyed this. We're going to have a whole series of little mini clips of tips and tricks coming out there. So I hope you'll enjoy them. Have a great day. Thanks.